Now it's time for the Voice for the Industry podcast.
Hey, Chris, it was a really good time to spend time with Chris Anderson from Applause yesterday. We spent a lot of time with him. He did webinars, meetings, everything else. Our first ever podcast was really a Taylor Olson, one of the founders of Applause. But we didn't spend too much time talking about Applause. It was more about Taylor and the impact he's had on the industry. But it was great to hear what Applause is doing. They've got some great benchmarking. They have working with over 3,000 companies, so they can tell you, they can give you a blueprint of where you need to be in certain key performance indicators to run the type of company you want and to keep up with the big companies, not necessarily giant size, but most efficient, most successful. So just great information, great experience. Definitely need to listen to it.
Yeah, another great partner to talk with, and their new benchmarking report just came out, so it was perfect timing. We got to hear all the metrics. It's a good listen.
And if we're ever stuck on a deserted island, I want Chris there because he's bringing the knife
Yes.
and the water purifier, and he's going to make sure we have food to eat. So that was really important. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. Today, I'm very excited for our episode, spending time with a guy I know very well and greatly admire and appreciate, Chris Anderson from Applause. How you doing, Chris?
Doing great, Ray. Great to be here.
Yeah, good. Glad to have you. Glad to have you. We've done a few things. I know we've done some webinars together and different things over the past, but it's nice to have you on the podcast and talk about yourself.
We run into each other at
Applause.
shows pretty often.
We do. Yeah. Quite often, as a matter of fact, at least during the travel season. And then
yeah, there are those peak seasons of trade shows where we're out and about a lot.
That's true. Well, listen, I've got your bio. Let me just tell everybody a little bit about you, and then we can go from there. Chris is the Vice President of Sales and co-founder of Applause, where he leads revenue growth and strategic partnerships. With a data-driven approach and a passion for customer success, Chris specializes in scaling sales teams, optimizing go-to-market strategies, and helping businesses maximize engagement and retention. His leadership has been instrumental in driving Applause's expansion across the home services industry. Well, officially, welcome again, sir. Good to have you.
Thank you. That was quite the introduction.
But I will say, you guys, for those of you, we're going to talk about Applause. You're going to give us a little more information, but you guys are, you've just grown so phenomenally fast, and it's obviously a testament to who you guys are and what you do, and and the benefit you provide pest and lawn companies. But it's been nice. I remember, I think what the first was a WorkWave conference, a user conference years ago, was the first time I really met you guys, and now it's so we were next to each other with the WorkWave conference again a few weeks ago. But anyway, so tell us all about yourself. What's your background? Tell us about Applause. Tell everybody whatever you want them to know, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Chris Anderson, one of the co-founders here at Applause. Previous to Applause, I actually came from the HR space. So this idea of employee engagement, employee motivation has always been kind of second nature to me. I had an HR consultancy where we would outsource HR professionals to smaller growing businesses that would go through kind of these HR hardships of, how do I bring more good people on? How do I keep the good people that are, currently working for me? And how do I keep them motivated, gamify the environment so they have a great culture developed in the company? That is something that's always been a little near and dear to my heart. And when this opportunity for Applause came around, my partner and co-founder, Taylor, he'd been in the pest control scene for a while, building out some solutions on the technological side of things, and he realized that there was this gap that often a lot of companies experience, where they have a hard time driving performance out of their technicians. It's a really good fit for me to jump into this kind of environment where we got to devise solutions and technologies around how do we influence and how do we motivate the behaviors of technicians that align with growth of the company, right? There's one thing to motivate technicians, but to align it with something that's going to be meaningful for the company, that's really what we strive to do here. And as we started to do this, what we realized is that the technician just has such an impact in the customer experience. So that's why it's so important to make sure that your technicians are happy, they're providing great service to your customers. And today, as you mentioned, we've been growing quite quickly. But today, I think we work with about 3,000 home service companies, and that's what this data set we're about to talk about is really good information for us, because we're able to extract a lot of that data from those 3,000 companies. But Yeah, that's in essence what we do. Changing behaviors for the betterment of your company in alignment with some of your growth strategies and objectives.
It's, I think it's fascinating. Again, I spent a lot of time in the industry on, working for a pest control company, and I was a technician once, a long time ago, back, when everything was black and white and we carried, concrete tools. But no, so I appreciate what you guys do and what you bring to the table. And when I first heard about like this idea that your customers could tip the technician through this app, and it was just kind of like, wow, that never even occurred to me, like as a thing. Because I remember back in the old days, we would actually get customers would send in tips, money for like checks for technicians, and the technicians would get usually around the holiday stuff like that. But very good, cool concept, and you guys have taken it, really expanded it to where, now you're providing so much information. I just wish I'd had that much information back when I was doing that kind of stuff. It'd have been nice. Um, so tell us about what's going on. You got some new stuff coming out. You mentioned your new benchmarking report. You want to talk a little bit about that and tell everybody, what's so exciting about that?
Yeah, as you alluded to, we kind of started out in this idea of, okay, what's the easiest way that we can motivate technicians quickly that doesn't necessarily cause too big of an impact to the business? And the idea was, incorporating tipping, right? Tipping is going to inherently influence the behavior of a technician, similar to how it does in any other service industry. So what it did was it started to elevate the quality of service being provided to each of the customers, and ultimately delivering better service, which resulted in a lot of great benefits for the company. And we thought to ourselves, okay, tipping seems to work and modify a certain behavior that the companies want to change in some way or another. What other metrics can we start to track, create transparency around, and ultimately drive certain behaviors that are going to align with company objectives? And ultimately, what we've been able to do is aggregate all the operational data that all these pest control companies and other home service companies use to, ensure efficiencies internally. And we've created kind of these benchmarks, right, of what the top performing companies are doing across Google reviews, across time on site, across just time driving in a car. All these great metrics are now available to us, and the report combines, I think, 18,000 data points from these 3,000 companies, and then we also combine that because we've got access to upwards of, I don't even know how many technicians now, but we conducted a survey where about 500 plus technicians replied to us regarding some of their insights into how they like to work. So we're combining a lot of that operational data with the survey data that we've received from technicians. And what makes this, most impactful, especially for pest, is about 65% of these companies are actually the data set that comes from pest control. So the goal here was really simple. Operators here, I think, a lot of opinions about what good should look like, right? They go to the shows, they're in their, breakout sessions, they're hearing kind of through the grapevine what X company is doing. But there's really never been like this real benchmark, this like true data set comprised of a ton of different companies to really create some good laws of averages, as well as what top performing companies are doing in each one of these data sets. So we wanted to show the industry like what a top performing company really looks like, from a data perspective. And the big takeaway is that companies that are winning today are not necessarily spending more on marketing. They're just running better operations, right?
Running
They're
better
the ones that are
businesses. Yeah.
running better businesses, running better efficiencies. And with those efficiencies come a lot of savings, a lot of cost avoidance, and those are the ones that seem to be growing.
Yeah, a lot of pest control owners spend a fair amount of money and time traveling and going to peer group meetings, right, to hear how other pest control operators run their business and do those things. And it's interesting because with our, we have a lot of customers in the industry too, and with our AI call analysis now, we're definitely seeing trends in some benchmarking. We know what the average cancellation rate is. We know, certain things like that where, it's valuable to these companies to be able to see that, because a lot of times they don't know, especially when they start, they're smaller, they're still growing, and their point of reference is, what they know, or maybe what their dad did or something like that. So I think it's fantastic. So how is this going to be something that's, obviously like part of your platform for your customers? Are you going to share it to the world in general? What's the idea?
Yeah, first step, obviously, we will iterate with time, but we have got a lot of interest in this benchmarking report that we've sent out to our existing customers. The benchmark report itself can be found on our website. Yeah, ultimately, what we want to do is just create more transparency into what superior service, superior operations look like. So a lot of these control companies can strive towards those same ends, right? Where they have access to all the data that they're tracking internally within their own organization. But now they can see, hey, I'm here. Top performing companies are here. What initiatives can I create in order to get to those, those higher level of performances?
Yeah. Is there anything that surprised you? Like, is there a data set that you're like, whoa, I didn't think that, I didn't expect to see that.
Yeah,
Things like
I
that.
think this I think the idea, and it goes back to what we do and what we've kind of our theory, what we've theorized over years is, the impact that a technician can have over your marketing engine. I think that's oftentimes overlooked where, you look at these big businesses that are, doing really well and you think, oh, well, they just have a ton of funds and they got a ton of resources. So they just drive it into marketing and then they can use those resources to hire sales folks. But in essence, the technician has the most influence and impact over your marketing strategy because whether or
Yeah.
not
Oh, yeah.
a customer has a good experience is going to result in a few things, right? It's going to result in either a positive or a negative 5-star review. It's going to result in potentially a referral, right? Where they had such a great experience that they're willing to, get their friends and neighbors involved and participate in the same service. And this idea of longevity, right? Keeping the customer in the seat for as long as possible. That doesn't come from poor service. That comes from elevated service that they know they're going to get
Right.
consistent service. And all that's in the charge of the technician. So that was one of the things that we found really interesting is this idea that, marketing gets the lead, but the technician really determines whether that customer stays with you, leaves a review, or refers a neighbor. So yeah, customers just don't write the reviews because the marketing's great. They don't get it because they think your
Right.
brand is really cool, right? They write the reviews because the
Right.
technician that serviced their account did a professional job. They went out and shook their hand and showed them everything that they did to make sure that they were satisfied. And that's where real kind of service led growth can make a huge impact. So that was one of the data sets that probably not surprising to us, but I think oftentimes gets overlooked as a real means for growth within the company if you focus on just the satisfaction and the efficiency of your technicians.
Yeah, well, I mean, to your point, if it was all about marketing, then nobody would cancel, right? I mean, they
Right.
sign up for whatever reason they signed up for, and they'd stay forever, like you said. But yeah, technicians basically, I mean, they are your company, and that's what I've always said is, that technician, no matter what else you do in your company, when that technician shows up, whether the customer's home or not or whatever, that's who you are at that time, at that day. That's who you are. That one technician, that one service, right? And you may have been somebody, you may have been different last time, and that's the other, the thing about technicians too is what I've noticed over time is when I first started working in the pastoral company. There were technicians that had been there. Like there was one he was treating grandkids that he treated the parents, they had kids, he treated them, and then they had kids, 3 generations of the same technician. And I think we're starting to see maybe that come back a little bit because I think to your point, companies are starting to understand and realize that the technicians are extremely valuable, and really it's the basis of what you do. And then also the CSRs, a lot of time and effort training goes into technicians. Not We don't see as much on the CSR side, and that's who your customers talk to most of the time. They might talk to their technician here and there, but usually if they're communicating with your company, they're talking to a CSR, they're texting a CSR. That's like the face of your company as well, and so that's why I think you guys are looking at bringing some of that in as well into you have some of that in there as well. So it's not just your field employees. You got to get a holistic view of all of the customer interaction with all your employees and improve that overall. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the CSR is just like the technicians. They're the ones that have the first touches with the customer, right? They're the ones that are communicating with them most. So ultimately, if your people are incentivized to provide great quality service, both on the actual service side or just the customer service side, you're creating this experience for the customer that tells them, okay, I'm trusting now that this company is going to take care of my friends and family if I refer them over to you. Or I want to provide that 5-star review because of the work that you put in for me to satisfy, my concerns or whatever it may have been. One of the really interesting things that we found as well within the data set was that, you know, customer satisfaction and that kind of transparency actually motivates more than money. So one of the questions that we ask is, okay, what's your biggest motivator within field services from a technician's perspective? And we ask the technicians what motivates them most in their job, and then the number one answer came back is, I just want to know my customers are happy. Like, it just makes me feel good knowing that my work is appreciated and that they, thought of themselves or thought of me to submit this notice that, hey, the work that John did was really great.
Yeah.
And that's about I think it was around 39% of the technicians selected say that they would rather be motivated through understanding that they provided a great service and the customer was satisfied, even more so than money. Like, pay and bonuses were second to that influencer around
Right.
27%. So, I mean, technicians just really take pride in the work that they're doing. They care about their customers and they want to hear from them. And prior to Applause, it was kind of like, all right, I got to go into some kind of CRM and find out whether or not that customer was happy, right? And Applause just kind of brings that to the forefront, where there's better transparency into their performance. And one of those performance metrics is, hey, how happy is the customer? I hear all the time that from technicians directly. Sometimes they'll get like a 1 out of 10 rating scale. And when they get the 10, they feel great. But man, when they get that comment associated with the 10
Mhm.
that said, "Hey, John showed up early and he walked me through everything he did. He found some webs in my in my eaves or something like that and got rid of them for me." Feel so much safer. Like that for them is the ultimate motivator, ultimate dopamine hit that they're always chasing. So that was one of the really more interesting things, is that customer satisfaction for the tax is motivates more than money.
Yeah. Well, what I like about what you guys do, there's a couple of, obviously there's more than one thing I like about it, but from the company side, you make it really easy for the company, the people that run the business, right? I know way back, we used to have technician bonuses and all that. We had to track all this stuff and run all these reports, and then the other thing I really like, so it makes it easy for the management, the ownership of the company, because you guys are kind of doing all that work in the background for them, right? But then I also like the fact that it's sometimes it's hard to get those positive reactions from customers to the technicians. Sometimes the customers will write, when they send it back in the old days, when they used to write a check, they would write a little note on there and Bob did a great job or whatever. But like I like is you guys, it goes right to the technician. I mean, there's no middle person in there. When that customer leaves that review and says John did a great job, John knows it. Right. He doesn't have to rely on somebody in the office to remember to tell him, you know,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
or they have a meeting once a week and they bring up one good, or somebody like you see bulletin board and there's a positive comment for John on the bulletin board that sits there for 3 months and eventually falls off, stuff like that. So I love the fact that it's right there. It's in an app, which is how everybody lives their life today, right? And it's easy for them to get the tips, but like you said, it's easy to get the motivation and the praise, which we all like to be praised and told we
We
did a
do.
good job.
That's like
Yeah,
just human
absolutely.
nature for us. So we
Yeah,
know we like to
yeah.
know that we do a good job.
Yeah. And some of us up there are just willing to ask more than others, right? So
Yeah.
it's pretty, I think it's just an amazing thing what you guys do. Um, and you just talked about one of my topics was customer satisfaction motivates more than money, but so we already covered that one. But the other thing that I'm seeing too, customer service, good customer service is important, but also making it easier and easier to do business with a company is becoming very popular out there. It's because everybody wants things to be done quickly and easily. So again, having this ability to get the information directly to the employee, taking out, delays, I just think it makes it easier for the customer to give that positive feedback. You guys bring a great value. And there's a lot of, if you're not one of those 3,000 out there, you guys should talk to Applause and see how, because they can definitely help you. Right.
Well, appreciate the plug.
Hey, no problem. We're all about shameless plugs, shameful plugs here.
Yeah, shameful
Um,
plugs.
So I know you know a lot of your customers really well. I know with 3,000 though, you probably don't know all of them that well. But of the ones you know really well, what is one or two things maybe they're doing differently than what you see other companies do that is really helping them, get to that level where they're leading those benchmarks?
Yeah, as far as differently, it's hard
Or
hard to
consistently,
determine.
or
More
consistently, yeah,
consistently, yeah,
yeah. There you
definitely is
go.
kind of tough to find out what everybody's doing differently. But what we're seeing is kind of the trends, right? What are things that are similar across high performing companies? And one of the things and one of the trends that we see is this idea of incentivizing based upon some kind of performance metric internally. And the most common thing that we see being used right now is just the incentivizing of reviews, right? There's just a lot of alignment when you incentivize on reviews. One, because you're handing out this carrot to the technician, right? If you do a great service and that service comes back as a 5-star review, as a company, we want to reward you for that great service. So, the technician is happy because they're getting a reward from the company. They also, again, going back to this idea of receiving customer feedback, it's a method of feedback from customer to technician. So we're giving that shot of dopamine, if you will, to the technician because of positive feedback that they're getting from the customer. And then again, we leverage that Google review into growth, right? It's not just getting a Google review because we need reviews. It's the Google reviews are going to influence our local SEO. So we're showing up on the first page of Google when somebody is searching for our specific service. The Google Map Pack ranking is going to be higher because we have more reviews than our competitors. We have a higher rating than our competitors. One of the other things that's really important as well in that marketing space of Google reviews is the frequency at which we're receiving reviews, right? It's not just, hey, I got a ton of reviews last year and Google takes that into account. It's no, Google is going to look at the frequency at which you're receiving reviews to know which company is going to be more relevant in the now, right? So they're receiving customers on a regular basis that are positive, or they're providing positive feedback. So that's one trend that we see that a lot of companies are incentivizing them just because it has such an impact on so many different parts of the business, right? You've got your technicians that are happy that are getting a little bit more money if they do a great service. So they're motivated to provide quality service. In return, the customers are receiving a higher quality service because the technicians are incentivized to do so, which usually lead to referrals. They can lead to Google reviews. They can lead to just the customer staying. While at the same time, the company can leverage that Google review now for their SEO optimization or their Google Map Pack ranking or a better lead conversion. So that's one little metric that doesn't seem like it has that big of an impact across the business, but you can see how it just spider webs into the entire org and influencing parts of the business that are going to promote growth. So yeah, if a company's not incentivizing on reviews today, that is definitely one of the highest trends that we see when it comes to looking at companies that are succeeding and doing really well, and has
That makes a
really
lot of
one of the
sense.
highest
Yeah.
impacts. If you wanna start incentivizing, if you're thinking, hey, I've just got so many metrics that I'm currently tracking, which one of these metrics is going to yield the best fruit? I would say that Google reviews is definitely the place to start.
That's a very good point, and I'd never really thought of it from that perspective, but you're absolutely right. There's a lot of things you can incentivize and a lot of things you try to pay attention to, but if your customers are leaving you positive reviews, I also didn't really think about until you just said it. Like you have to continue to get reviews. Like it's not enough to have. We got 2,000 reviews, but like you said, Google's going to look at your history, and if you're still not consistently getting those reviews, then that's going to bring you down and hurt you a little bit. So that makes a
Yeah,
lot of
it's
sense.
it's often the thing that's a little overlooked
Right.
there is that we all think, okay, we need quantity and we need our overall rating, right? Those are the two big things that we all know about, right? We
Right.
need more reviews and we need a high rating. But ultimately, it's just as important to have frequency in the amount of reviews that you're receiving over time, because Google does have an algorithm, and that algorithm is built upon recency bias, right? It's not going to say, hey, you had 1,000 reviews 2 years ago, I'm still going to put you up in the front page. It's no, this company just had 100 reviews this month.
Right.
That's more relevant to the customer that's looking for your particular service, because I know now that these 100 customers just in the last 30 days have had a stellar experience. This is the company that I'm wanting to promote.
I heard a rumor that 4.5 stars is no longer good, right? So is everybody got to? Is the goal here now? You have to get. If you don't get 5 stars, you're not doing what you need to do.
Yeah, hey, I mean, we're in a day and age now where the customer feedback is paramount, and a day and age of just such readily available, accessible information that if you're at a 4 point star, it was usually considered great. But when you look at the Applause data set, 4.5 would actually place you in like the bottom 20% of all of our
Really?
companies. Yeah, it was really that was probably another thing that was a little surprising to us is that 4.5, you think that's pretty good, but more than 82% of the companies, again, these are companies that are using Applause and we kind of strategically go after reviews, but our data set shows that 82% are
Right.
above a 4.8 or higher. So if you're below a 4.8, you're in that bottom 20th percentile. So not to say that 4.5 is bad, like by any means, because it takes great work to create that kind of a rating. But if you're competing against the companies, with the 4.8s, with the 4.9s, especially in this environment of like Google Map packs where you're going to lose visibility, you're going to lose
Right.
leads, you're going to lose the opportunity to convert just because somebody else has that higher rating and the average is around 4.8 or 4.9. So if you want to be in the game with customers that are looking for your service, especially within your area, that's where you need to be is what the data is showing us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And even when they, let's say they find you, at least I know. I think what I always do is I look at it and like, oh, who's got the highest score, right? Who's got the most? Like, Amazon. I buy a lot of stuff on Amazon. And I always go to the reviews and okay, this one's got 4,000 reviews and yeah. So, to your point that I never thought about it, but yeah, you're right because if there's a 4.9 and a 4.5 and they both have a fair amount of reviews, I'm probably going to go with the 4.9. There's a
Yeah.
reason it's a little
You're
bit better,
you're
right? So
mitigating your risk as a consumer at that point, right? It's just like, all
yeah,
right,
yeah,
more customers have said 4.9 for this service, but also you're going to look at the count like everybody else does. Because if you got 5, 10 reviews and you look at it as like a
right,
4.9, it's like that's just your friends and family there. Like I don't necessarily trust that product yet, but I need a substantial amount of peers that say,
right,
okay, we've got 500 to 1,000 reviews at a 4.8, 4.9. That's consistency in the quality of service being delivered. Whether that be a product on
right.
Amazon or a field service that's being provided. That's just how we all operate now because we have access to that information. It's just readily available from just in the public domain. So it's definitely a priority that you raise above that 4.5 if you're there. Again, not to say that that's bad, but
Right.
if you want to be in the game, you want to get those leads, and you want to convert, you got to be in the 4.8, 4.9 range.
Wow. So to kind of put it all together. So Applause is you guys have this great system. It's an app. It allows your technicians to get real time feedback directly from customers and they can see the reviews. It allows the owners to choose to incentivize it financially. They don't have to, right? It's up to them, and it's also up to them how much the technician can get directly from the customer. And this benchmarking you're talking about, I just see a tremendous amount of value. And we love working with you guys. I know that we're partners also, and we see a lot of similarities in how you guys think and how you operate. And I'm just really glad you came on. I'm glad we could talk about Applause, and good to see you. Is there any final thoughts you want to share? Any final topics?
I mean, there's a lot of data that we can go over. Obviously, you can read the benchmark data. I will say a few of the things that come to mind before we break are that your workforce is really young and turning over very quickly. So if you're not paying attention to the technician turnover and how this newer generation is motivated, incentivized, that is definitely some time worth spent to ensure that the service being provided by these individuals is top notch. About 73% of technicians in the workforce have been doing it for 5 years or less. So it's just a very, very young workforce, and they don't have. I mean, I think it was 7.4% have like a decade or more. So your tenured, very senior reps are just
That's not
they're
much
not there.
historical knowledge, is it?
No,
Yeah.
exactly. So you got a lot of new folks that are coming in here, which tells us there's a lot of, technician turnover. So anything that we can do to motivate them to stay within the seat is going to be to your benefit because they're going to, like you said, accrue knowledge over time. They're going to get more efficient. They're going to get better at the service. So anything that we can do to influence that behavior and motivate them to stay within the role that they're in, it's definitely going to be worth it. Not only on the customer retention, customer satisfaction side of things, you're also going to experience growth through like a service-led growth initiative, but you're just going to keep your guys in seat a lot longer. And that's what we do. That's what we try to do is we find those metrics that are really going to yield the best results for your business. Like you said, we tie incentives to those particular metrics, and then we create just the transparency, right? A lot of times managers, territory managers are going to have all the data, but ultimately that data isn't working for them. It's not changing the behaviors. It's giving them the results, but it's not necessarily an action that's creating a different result. And that's where we try to come in and say, okay, we have this data. Let's put it in front of the technician. Let's show them where they're at in real time on this specific metric. Let's show them what your expectation is of them within that seat. And then let's tie a little carrot to it. Let's make it fun for them if they meet that expectation. And then you can gamify it further with like leaderboards. You can gamify it with competitions that you can now run. So you can get really creative within our environment. But the beauty of it is that you set it and then you forget it. It's not kind of this manual process of me going through and tracking, okay, how many reviews did John get this week? All right, I got to go to Google and see how many times John's name was mentioned. All this is just happening in the background. You set the parameters, you set the expectations, and you let the system run so that you can focus on more important initiatives within the business. And yeah, that's what we're here for. That's what we want to do, be that automation, that key component to drive service-led growth for companies in the field service space.
Wow, very well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. I just think it's a fantastic all the way. And you mentioned, the younger generation, the younger workforce, and they're definitely motivated differently than, when I was a technician, obviously, or even in, like my children, my oldest he's going to be 38 this year. So he just turned 38, as a matter of fact. So even my kids were becoming workers and everything else. They're motivated differently than what the newer generation is motivated differently than even my millennial kids, right? And so I think it's really fascinating to kind of see how companies are adapting to that. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate your time, but we're gonna couple fun questions here at the end. I think we got some people joining us coming back in. There's Carissa. Hey, Carissa, how you doing?
Hello.
We got an extra benefit today. We have Bryn.
Before we jump, for those
Yeah.
that don't get a chance to kind of read through the benchmark report, I just wanted to go through some of
Okay.
the top benchmarks, just so everybody has some data to take back with them. So visits per day, we want to be in between 8 to 12, and that's in kind of the pest and lawn space. Time on site, we want to be under 60 minutes, but most are under 30. Reservice rate, we want to be below a 5%. Windshield time under 1 hour a day of actual driving. On-time arrival is at 90%. We found that the tardiness and just being on time is a real important metric when it comes to customer retention. We talked about Google reviews, 4.8 and above. If you're running some kind of CSAT or NPS score on a 0 out of 10 rating scale, you want to be above a 90. And then route volume is 5 to 10x industry average. So for those that are looking for those benchmarks, don't have time to kind of read through all the benchmark report that we created, that's the nuts and bolts of it.
That's fascinating. And you said that they can go to applause.com or applaud. What is your website address?
applaushq.com. Yep. And yeah,
right.
the applause.com wasn't available, so we had to be able to create it.
I know you had the HQ in there, but I wasn't sure if it was first or last. So applaushq.com. That's where you want to go. All right. Well, thank you for pointing those out. Sorry, I should have asked you those earlier, but we got them out there. So, all right. So we got some questions here. Let's see. So I'll ask this one, and we'll let ladies first. We'll let Bryn answer first. You can only see the world in one color. What color would it be that you would want to see the world?
I'd say blue. It's a primary color, and mostly when you look around, you do see blue. So I'd say blue.
Well, all right. Chris, how about you?
That was a smart answer. I don't know. I was trying to think about this. I'm like, I would just pick my favorite color, so I'll say green.
Chris, what do you think?
I was also going to say green. That was the first thing that came to mind. Like green is very lively. It's sign of life. I like that a lot.
You know what? And that was what I thought too, because I've always lived close to the water and always lived like in where it's green. And I've lived in Florida most of my life, and I think green would make I'd be okay with it just seeing green if I can only have one. So interesting, 3 greens and a blue. We could all make yellow. Or the other way around. Okay? If you were going to be stranded on a deserted island and you knew ahead of time, what 3 items would you want to have on that island before you became stranded on it? That's an interesting question. Carissa, why don't you go first?
Ooh, this is a tough one. I would can you bring a phone if you don't even know if there's power or anything? That's the thing. I'd probably say, okay, in my phone, my chapstick, and coffee would be
Oh,
my 3 things.
chapstick and coffee. So you can have like a little Keurig machine and a never-ending supply of K-cups. All right. Chris, what do you think? What would you bring to a deserted island if you were going to get stranded on one?
Oh man. Well, I burn really easy, so I'm gonna say sunscreen. Just unlimited supply of sunscreen. Then I'm a little bit of a survivalist, so I'll bring a really sturdy like survival knife. And then probably like some kind of, if I'm on an island, there's probably not a good source of water, so like a water purification system or tool.
Very pragmatic answers. Yes. I like that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I was a recliner, but no, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm more of like the survivalist mentality where I'm not like looking to get saved. I'm like, all right, how do I survive on this island for as long as I need to?
That's a good approach. Bren, what do you think? What would you bring?
Definitely my dog.
Oh,
Can't
okay.
survive without him. Water and then an energy drink.
Energy drink. That's very good. I like the knife idea. I think you got to have some way to survive. Um, and it would be nice to have a phone, but it probably wouldn't last very long. And then, some kind of, like you said, some kind of way to have something to drink consistently, purification system or whatever. But like you said, you got to survive it for a while. But all right, and then we have one last question, then we'll be done. I'll answer this one first. What is your favorite time of the day, and why? Um, my favorite time of the day is actually right after sunset, before it gets dark, I guess dusk, whatever. Sometimes I just go sit outside and just be outside for that time of the day. I like it just as everything kind of settles down, and there's still enough light to see, but it's kind of the day's winding down. So that's my answer. What about you, Chris?
I have to say a little bit before that, a little bit before sunset, where it's kind of cooled off a little bit. You don't have like the high heat of the sun in the middle of the sky, but still enough light to get out there and do fun things and go on adventures. I like being outdoors with my kiddos and stuff. So going on hikes or just being in the backyard throwing the ball, those are usually the best times for me.
Yeah, it gets really hot here in the summer, so that's usually you have to wait till that time of day when it breaks because it's pretty hot.
Yeah.
Krista, what about you?
I would probably say the morning. That's when I get my time, and then that's my most productive time of the day also.
So you got a little private time in the
Mm.
morning.
Yeah.
Bren, what about you?
I would say sunset. Texas is notoriously known for beautiful sunsets.
Well, we had 3 of them that are pretty close, and then I used to like the morning, but the older I get, the less I wanna be up in the morning. All right, well, thanks again, Chris. This has been great. Really appreciate your time. Everybody, applaushq.com. They do great things, great benchmarking information, so go talk to them if you haven't already talked to them. Thanks, Chris. Have a good rest of the day.
Yeah. Thanks for having us, Ray. You too. We'll see you.
Thank you for joining us.
See you next time.